Feelings. I have to learn how to have feelings. This is not something that, I don't know, I would consider myself much capable of. And I mean, perhaps that's part of the problem that I have this perception that I don't have feelings. It's not that I don't have feelings. I can write them down quite often. I can write about feelings, but I can't express them in any other way. And I even remember a girl once telling me, well, a girlfriend telling me, she's like, I feel like you don't need me. I was like, what are you talking about? You have the most important job of all. You keep the invisible enemies away. And she didn't seem to think I was being serious. Like how important that is to me, that like being with someone, like it keeps things that otherwise can show up. I don't know how else to explain it. If I'm in bed with someone else, there's no chance for the Minotaur to show up and hit me in the back with an axe, even if like my I'm facing towards the wall, and like all the hands and stuff that live under the bed, they can't show up either because there's someone else there. And it's more complicated than that, but like that's kind of the idea. And the next thing she said was, I feel like you don't need anybody. I was like, well, that's a strange thing to say. Like, I'd consider myself one of the most desperate people I've ever met, but it is on such a fundamental level that most people can't recognize it because it's something they passed in life so long ago, like before they even had memory. Like if I had to give like a tableau of my like emotional self, if I had to give like a tableau, by the way, I believe it translates quite literally into living picture or living image. But it would be an infant's hand reaching in to like total black. Like everything else is darkness, possibly shadow monsters, and, like grabbing at nothing. That's what I would say, like my internal emotional life is. It's just terror. I don't know how else to explain it. Um, Feelings aren't something my family had, certainly not in the way I do. I can't say they don't have feelings, but they don't seem to experience them in the way that I do. And looking to anyone there is not going to go well. It's going, if you go with any kind of hope, you're going to be severely let down. Um, it's just not something those people are capable of. They don't have it. And like when I was younger, I was bitter about it and like resentful and angry, and I couldn't understand it. And then finally I figured it out. Like they don't have them. And I think my dad might have been suppressing or repressing them like I do. But the other ones, like they don't have that. Uh and it's not like my mom or brothers are like bad people. Like my mom's like super religious and like in the humble sense of it, like will do a lot for people she doesn't even know. Too much in my eyes. But like if you if I called her right now at 4 in the morning, I was like, hey, would you get me food? She's 80 years old. She would get out of bed and get me food. But if I asked her to talk about feelings, well, or if I wanted to like tell her something about myself, get the fuck out of here. Like that ain't going nowhere. Like she don't have that. And you know, some people do, some don't. Like you can't fault people for what they aren't. Uh, however, so like it's not like I grew up in like a rich emotional world. Like everything is like pushed down, and I'm the youngest out of everyone. So like I understand in most worlds that would mean attention is going to be put on the youngest, but in my world, like you have the smallest voice, no one hears you, no one's paying attention to you, no one cares. And I suppose I should have made more noise when I was younger, like, and but I was so like traumatized and stuff and terrified of everyone that like I was convinced it could only make things worse. So, but in the nature of feelings, like that's like the background, I suppose, and or at least the familial upbringing sense, because I guess a lot of stuff develops there, especially in like when you're an infant and like a toddler and stuff. And I think this is my theory that my like mind never developed those like infantile bonds with the parents. I have a theory about this. Like I am still searching to try and find bonds with someone, because the one serious relationship I was with, I find it very concerning how still attached to her I am, and I suspect she knew that would happen. I suspect she knew a lot that I just don't understand. Well, I'm certain she did. Uh, she was pretty slick with some things. Like one of my favorite ploys was she had me write this letter to her, and then she's like, "Now read it." I was like, "Ooh, you're slick. I would never even think of doing something like that." And like when you read it aloud. Like I want you to say what you wrote down. Ooh, that was slick. That was that was slick. But so I don't think I ever like formed connections with people, and therefore I am still trying to like my brain still has to form those type of bonds to something. Otherwise it like just stays. Like there can be no development past that, because to exist it's like the building blocks. Like you have to have these to put stuff on top of it, and if you don't have this like fundamental base, then it's just stuck. And like that's an unfortunate way to look at it, because then there's very little I can do with that. Like how can I work with something that is just doomed? However, I kind of also believe like anything in your mind can be simulated. Like you can trick yourself into believing whatever you need to. Um, like, in essence, where is the past? Plenty of people, we all believe lies every single day. So what if we're just in control of the lies we believe? And if you believe it, for all intents and purposes, it is true. So if you can convince yourself of things that aren't necessarily true but would be helpful for you to believe, I that has legs in certain cases. That is meaningful for some things. I don't know if it will work for what I need it to. But then, like, I think about elements of like sexuality and stuff, and like how I form the connections there, like it's almost meaningless to me. And I think this is why I can have the attitude towards it I do, where I'm quite indifferent and it's not a big deal. And like, it fucking fucks me up that people need to like drink just to talk about sex, like full grown adults. And like that, I don't know how to work with that because to me, it's just wide open. Like, it, but I think to even have the viewpoint I do of sexuality, you like it is directly because of abuse and like sexual abuse and like pretty extreme stuff. But like if I were to view it, I couldn't view it another way because like if I view sex as like a deeply intimate and interpersonal thing, then I have to like confront all this other crazy shit as opposed to it's just like a fucked up manifestation of people's lives. um, but you know, in the super square sense of like sex is like intimate and stuff. Um, like I don't know how to deal with that, and that's also why I don't date squares and like won't emotionally involve myself with like squares because they have no ability to understand. Like we're looking at things from two fundamentally different ways, and it's going to cause strife. It's going to cause conflict, friction. So like I can't just like pick a girl up on the street. I can't just do that because like we will never connect. Um, and so I don't even on like the most personal and intimate like one to one level, I still like emotionally am so off from everything else. Like I even like fundamental gender roles, like this is something that like I have mentioned before many times, and it's probably evident in a lot of my attitudes that I grew up in a hyper masculinized world. And like I don't mean like a boys college, like I mean everything kind of plays by like prison rules. Like that's the world I know. And if you are male and you have been violated, you are not a man. And like, so my whole life, I have lived with this that I can never be a man because there's so much stuff that happened to me when I was little. And it doesn't, I know that's going to confuse people to say, like, how can you hold something that happened to you when you're little and you have no control? It doesn't matter. It happened. Like, and now in a way you're no good, and like life's not fair. uh you get all kinds of things sometimes you didn't ask for. You gotta do what you can with it. uh Life isn't fair. I remember this kid was like real fucked up about some shit that happened, and I remember taking him aside and telling him like, look, do you think being in a cage for the next 15 to 20 years is going to help you feel any better about what just happened? Then get it in fucking check, man. Like, there ain't no way to feel about it, so don't feel one way or the other about it. Just get over it. And I mean, even by my own admission, you largely never get over a lot of things, but you do learn how to push them down. And if you have enough, though, well, then it becomes a problem because leaks start forming everywhere. And, to an extent, I suppose, well, like, I'm actively trying to seek out feelings. Like, I'm intentionally trying to challenge myself because it's something I can't do, and it's something I'm so resistant to, that I find it deeply troubling. And I think it would dramatically improve a lot of my writing and creative output. Like here, I'm still learning. Writing, I have like a unique style and technique that I've developed over like 25 years, and it's like all mine, and I know how to convey myself very well. But I never put effort into publishing anything because so it's like they're not gonna get it. And the couple things I did put out, people really liked, but I would never put out like the greater body of my work. And I was actually going, I have dozens of notebooks. This isn't important. It's about feelings, not notebooks. But the whole like feelings issue and challenging myself with this and making myself do something that's uncomfortable and somewhat publicly too, because like the entire point of doing this is dealing with uncomfortable things that I don't want to. Like that's like reality, like confronting extremely uncomfortable and unfamiliar things. And what happens, like that is a lot of what life is in my eyes, or at least the parts that are difficult and the parts that are going to stick with you and that you're going to remember. uh, so that kind of serves its purpose here, but good lord, I don't like it. I don't like it one bit, or at least don't know how. Like I can tell you there's always like a need to cry and a need to like grab on to someone else. Um, like hide, hug, like troubling, like what you would see a very, very young child do. Um, and it once again is deeply troubling to me how like in line my feelings are with that. One time I sang, I really wish I didn't relate to songs so much that 18-year-old girls wrote. Uh, but it seems that like there's so many things that are in line with that, and the reason it's troubling to me is because if that is the case, it reminds me of like in the 1950s there were a bunch of studies written about these kids they found in like the deep south. They found a couple of them that no one had taught to speak. Like they were quite literally feral children. They had no ability to speak, and they were usually between the ages of like 6 to 12. But if you aren't taught to speak as you're like an infant and growing up, if no one teaches you any language, you will never develop the ability to use language. And how that speaks to me is like in a lot of ways I am just doomed and permanently limited. And I don't like that. I don't like accepting that. Uh, but I'd be lying if I didn't say at least part of me thinks it's true. Uh, that if you are not taught to do this as a infant and a young child, then you're just shit out of luck. Like you will never be able to form the building blocks because that part of your brain is already like solidified. Um, like the concept of how do you communicate with a part of your brain that you had before words. Um, like how do you communicate with an infantile part of your brain? Like you don't remember what was going on. You don't. I don't know about you, but like I can remember so much, and that's how I remember back to what was going on. I assess the situation, I see what was happening, and I try not to do this much. Like I try not to just randomly think of old things, because like every time you pull up a memory, you're slightly changing it to like better suit who you are now. So like the more you interact with a memory, the more you change that memory. And I try to leave things as they are so I will remember them correctly. And even then, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that's just not so. Um, but nevertheless, in terms of feelings, like it doesn't matter what actually happened and what actually happened and what didn't happen. It matters what I believe. Now, is there some kind of chemical, almost physiological level where like my brain cannot develop emotions? I don't know. It's possible, but I have to at least put a genuine effort forth for a couple months to be able to do this. And like I know I feel like I want to cry and I can't cry and I never do. Um, the one long term girlfriend, she got me to cry twice. But like she had, it's like pulling teeth. And one time I was on a whole lot of drugs, a whole lot of heroin, unfortunately. That made it easier. But, I mean, obviously I can't go and do that now. I would kind of defeat the purpose, and that's like hiding behind something. That's using something to obscure what's going on. And the same reason I view, like, I look down on liquor to deal with sexuality. Like, I find it appalling. Uh, you should deal with this sober. Like, if you can't deal with it sober, then you shouldn't deal with it at all. And if you can't deal with it at all, then obviously you need to do something about this. But most people aren't going to look at it that way. And the way people are so fucked up about sexuality, like obviously I had issues growing up. Like I don't make any like qualms about that. But like what happened? Like these people are so like anal retentive. Uh, like they're so tight about it. It like, what are you trying to hide? Like, I don't I don't see how you can be so frightened of like vanilla sex on top of it. Like I can see if we're talking about some pretty hardcore stuff, how some people might get turned off by it and be like, "Whoa, whoa." I can understand that, but like everyone has like the animalistic sexual compulsion. You can suppress it and repress it, but like even I have that, and it's like a drive. It's not human. It's something earlier, and so like everyone has that, and everyone has desire to um, fuck. Like you can suppress it or repress it, but it's still there. And like I've never understood how people can be so tight about it, but I guess they've never had to like confront it really. Like it's always like, you know, they're intoxicated and then they're in the room with the lights off and like I don't know, that shit makes no sense to me. I don't get it. But I guess also deviant sexuality is part of like a coping mechanism for me as well, for dealing with extremely complicated feelings that I can't process. So, hey, what can I say? God damn it, it rhymed. It rhymed. That does not bode well. I have to go to work today, so I can't really spend time doing this. So, this is gonna be what it is. It is what it is. What can I say? Take it for what it's worth, I guess.